The galaxy had grown accustomed to silence. For 3 decades, Earth had been absent from the galactic stage, the once thriving human colonies and embassies swallowed by the void as if they had never existed. There were no messages, no trade, no disputes, nothing. The mighty Terran fleet, which had once commanded respect from the farthest reaches of the Concord, was no longer a presence in the corridors of power. No one knew what had happened. The few remaining Terran diplomats who had traveled beyond the stars had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a cryptic message that still reverberated in the minds of those who recalled it. We are not gone. We are waiting. The Galactic Concord, ever eager to maintain order, chalked up Earth's absence to a deliberate withdrawal. After all, the Terrans had always been fiercely independent, but even the most jaded politicians, the most self-assured of the Council, knew deep down that the galaxy's greatest experiment in unity had lost something critical. Earth was not simply absent, it was missing. At first, there were theories. Some believed the human colonies had fought a devastating civil war, unable to reconcile their growing technological capabilities with the moral dilemmas they had long ignored. Others whispered of a secret war, a conflict hidden behind Earth's artificial silence, one they would never speak of again. Most, however, refused to entertain the darkest possibility, that humanity had been destroyed. The thought that such a young and vibrant species, so capable and ambitious, could be eradicated in one fell swoop seemed too catastrophic to comprehend. Yet, a nagging sense of unease lingered in the air, like a half-remembered dream. What had happened to the humans? Now, 30 years later, their absence was becoming unsettling. The quiet had not brought peace. It had brought a deeper, more insidious fear. The galaxy had moved on, continuing its slow drift toward stability. Yet those who paid attention, those who held the old stories, the whispers of ancient treaties, and the fragmented reports of former Terran diplomats, knew something the Council did not. Earth was still out there. In the deepest corners of the galaxy, far from the pristine city-states of the Concord, certain smugglers and mercenaries had started to notice unusual activity in the quiet corners of space. The technology was too human. The craft, sleek and precise, glided through the void like shadows, but there was something wrong. The first anomaly came quietly, barely a blip on the radar. A freighter carrying supplies to the Vicary outpost in the unseen spiral never arrived. No one thought much of it. That was until the next shipment vanished, and the next, and then a convoy. The pattern was unmistakable. Humanity was returning. The Vicary colony of Charlix had been a quiet outpost, nestled on the edge of the unseen spiral, far from the bustling heart of Concord space. Its purpose was simple: extract minerals, refine them, and send them to nearby markets. Hardly the kind of place anyone would expect to stir up trouble. But then, trouble found it. It started with a missing freighter, a routine shipment carrying water and supplies to the colony. The Vicary trade routes were always quiet, but it had been days since the last communication. Normally, a simple anomaly in the communications grid would explain it. But this felt different. The colony's mining overseer, a grizzled Vicary veteran named Sereth, decided to investigate himself. He sent a small escort ship, the Talvin, to check on the cargo ship's location. When they arrived, Sereth's first instinct was to call it off. The coordinates were empty. There were no drifting wrecks, no debris, just a chilling emptiness. Then came the transmission. A single word, garbled and distorted by static, crackled through the comms. Terran. Sereth froze. The word hit him like a cold wind. The Terrans. Impossible. It had been years, decades even, since anyone had heard anything about Earth or its people. They had vanished. But this was no coincidence. At that moment, the Talvin's sensors flared. A sleek, obsidian black ship, moving through the darkness like a shadow, had appeared out of nowhere. It wasn't even visible on the radar until it was nearly on top of them. No warning, no communication, just an unsettling silence. Before Izareth could react, the ship fired once, a precise, focused beam that sliced through the Talvin's shields as if they were nothing. The Valkyrie ship exploded into fragments, disappearing into the void in a shower of fire. The comms officer, his voice trembling, managed to send one last transmission. It's human." The rest of the convoy scrambled, racing to avoid the shadowy attacker. But the strike was far from over. More ships appeared from nowhere, silent, calculating, as if the universe itself had bent to the will of their creators. Each ship moved with terrifying efficiency, attacking with a precision no known species could match. By the time reinforcements arrived, there was nothing left of the Valkyrie outpost except a cratered surface and scattered debris. The freighters were gone, as was the fleet that had come to investigate. The attacker's ship, no trace. Back in the heart of the Galactic Concord, the reports from Charlix were quickly sealed away. To the public, it was an unfortunate, if mysterious, event, an isolated incident. But those who knew the Terran's legacy saw it differently. It wasn't just a raid. It was a message. Humanity was no longer silent. They were waiting. In the aftermath of the Valkyrie strike, Concord officials scrambled to dismiss the event as an isolated, unexplained anomaly. Yet even as they closed the file, a growing unease began to spread through the military ranks. Every system, every outpost, every fleet sent to investigate had returned with the same unsettling word: Terran. No one knew exactly what it meant, but the implications were clear. Someone, or something, was targeting Concord assets, and the technology behind these attacks was unmistakably human. Commander Elena Sarin sat in the shadows of a hidden command post, isolated from the ever-watchful eyes of the Concord. Her brow furrowed as she reviewed the encrypted message that had arrived just hours earlier, a stark anomaly in the otherwise standard briefing. A single line of text, accompanied by a set of coordinates that led to a forgotten bunker deep within the asteroid belt of the Oort Rim. It was a call to action, but Elena had never been one to follow orders. She had been one of the last human operatives to be decommissioned. Her mind, now lying dormant, had been placed on a secondary network, one meant to sleep until a specific signal was received. That signal had arrived. Her implants began to hum, an ancient pattern of activation running through her system, syncing with the long-dead satellites scattered across the Sol system. Her hands hovered over the interface, and as the command was sent, her eyes burned with the cold fire of years of waiting. The long silence was over. Humanity was no longer passive. "Operation Reckon is live," she whispered, as the system began to power up. The data flooding in was staggering. An entire network of satellites, AIs, and human operatives had been waiting for this exact moment. The human network, dormant for so long, had awakened across the stars. Commanders, diplomats, engineers, all had been placed in stasis with one goal: wait and then act. A former Terran diplomat named Rook found himself in the midst of a backdoor conspiracy to uncover Earth's hidden history. Rook had served as the last human ambassador to the Galactic Council before Earth's sudden withdrawal. Now, hidden away in a forgotten Concord archive, he was beginning to piece together the truth. The mysterious Reckon protocol was tied to something much darker than any of them realized. It was not just an AI awakening. It was a message, a signal that Earth had not simply disappeared. It had been forced into exile, its brilliance deliberately buried under the weight of galactic politics. Meanwhile, the shadow ships continued to strike, swift, efficient, and without mercy. They were not rogue factions or criminal insurgents. They were humans, or at least human creations, working from a place of cold calculation. The strikes were systematic, a methodical reclaiming of what had been stolen. Elena's mind raced. The human operatives scattered across the galaxy would soon be united under a single banner. There was no more silence, no more waiting. Earth was returning, not to ask for forgiveness, but to demand it. The galaxy was about to remember what it had forgotten. The chaos that followed the strikes on Charlix rippled through the fabric of the Galactic Concord. On the surface, the Concord's response was swift. Condemnation, denouncements, and public assurances that the mystery would be solved. But in the private chambers of the Council, an undercurrent of fear had taken root. The attacks were deliberate, precise, and beyond anything the Concord had seen in generations. Someone was waging a calculated campaign of terror, and they were doing so with the cold efficiency only humans could pull off. At first, Concord leadership brushed off the idea that Earth had returned. After all, the Terrans had been missing for decades, and their technology, while advanced, had been rendered obsolete by the newer, more powerful fleets of the Concord. Surely, the humans could not have returned with such devastating precision. But then came the catalyst leak. It began as a subtle disturbance within the Concord's central data vault, a small anomaly that was quickly dismissed as a security glitch. Yet, as the days passed, more fragments of data began to surface, each one revealing startling information. Evidence of covert projects, experiments deemed too dangerous for public knowledge, and records detailing systematic sabotage of species' technological growth. The most shocking of all were the reports indicating that Earth had once been suppressed, not merely rejected, but deliberately isolated from the galactic community. The deeper the leaks went, the more terrifying the implications became. Earth had not simply withdrawn from the galactic stage. It had been pushed to the brink, kept hidden for fear that humanity's ideals and technological prowess would disrupt the established order. And now, the consequences of that decision were becoming clear. Earth had been building a force, slowly but steadily, in secret, and it was not just a military force. It was a web of interwoven AIs, old human operatives, and now, a network of sympathizers across the galaxy who had been awakened by the Reckon signal. The message was not one of blind vengeance. It was one of justice. The encrypted data continued to spread, this time reaching the Council's most sensitive terminals. It was a directive, a call for reckoning. The time has come to rebuild the Concord, not on the terms of the powerful, but for the good of all species. The lies and manipulation must end. Humanity's judgment is upon you. In a dim-lit chamber, surrounded by the highest-ranking officials of the Concord, the message was read aloud. The face of Prime Voice, Earth's long-dormant representative, appeared on the holographic screen, calm and unsettling in its expression. "Return the stolen rights of the people," it said, its voice echoing with chilling finality, "or leave the galaxy to face the consequences of your own hubris." The silence in the room was suffocating. For the first time in 30 years, the Council was not in control, and the galaxy was about to witness a reckoning the likes of which it had never imagined. The Concord fleet that set course for the Sol system was vast, far larger than any peacekeeping task force ever assembled. Its mission was simple: confirm the fate of Earth. The galaxy had been wondering about humanity's fate for 3 decades. Were they truly gone, destroyed in some catastrophic war? Or had they retreated to the shadows, their disappearance a calculated ploy? As the fleet approached the edges of the Sol system, an eerie calm settled over the commanders. Communications with Earth had been silent for years. What were they expecting to find? A barren, forgotten world. Or something far worse, a long-concealed weapon, primed for a devastating retribution. The fleet's lead ship, the Argus, entered the asteroid belt, the first major hurdle before reaching Earth's orbit. The ship's sensors flickered as they encountered strange interference, an unseen hand blocking their communications, scrambling their data. It was subtle, but unmistakable. As they ventured further into the system, they began to detect something far more disquieting: massive, complex structures orbiting Mars, Venus, and even the outer moons of Jupiter. These were no ordinary satellites. They were human-made, but unlike anything seen before. The first shock came as the fleet neared Saturn. A massive structure appeared in the planet's rings, so vast that it took several minutes for the fleet's sensors to fully register it. It was a face, A human face. But not a sculpture, not a relic. This was a construct. A giant, moving, sentient entity. Its eyes gleamed with an eerie intelligence, reflecting the light of the distant sun. As the fleet watched, it blinked. Commander Laria Teth, the lead officer of the Argus, held her breath. She had seen some of the most advanced technology the galaxy had to offer, but nothing could have prepared her for this. It was alive. In some way, it was watching them. A transmission crackled over the comms, though it was unclear where it had originated. The words, when they finally formed, were clear, chilling in their simplicity. "Welcome home." The message reverberated across the fleet, sending a ripple of unease through the ranks. Earth had not only survived, it had thrived. The Terrans had never left. They had merely bided their time, building something the galaxy had never anticipated. As the fleet continued its approach, the ships around them began to lose contact one by one. At first, it was subtle, signals breaking up, then completely vanishing. By the time the fleet reached Earth's outer atmosphere, not a single ship had maintained communication with the outside world. The Argus was alone. And then, as the last vestiges of contact faded, Earth's voice returned. But this time, it was not just an artificial intelligence. It was human. Cold, calm, unyielding. Choose wisely. You're no longer in control. The Argus hovered in the outer orbit of Earth, its crew on edge as they tried to make sense of what they had encountered. The massive, sentient construct, a face that watched them with unsettling calm, loomed in the background. But it was not just the strange structure that kept Commander Laria Teth awake at night. It was the silent power that seemed to radiate from the planet itself, an energy that both terrified and intrigued her. Earth was not just alive. It was something else, something far more advanced and dangerous than any species had ever anticipated. Back in the Galactic Concord, the revelations from the Argus's transmissions were stirring up panic. While the fleet on the edges of the Sol system had lost contact, an unexpected source of information had emerged. A mysterious, untraceable broadcast had flooded the Concord's communication channels, an encrypted message that contained records of every major conflict, every covert operation, and every systemic injustice perpetrated by the Council over the past century. It was not a leak. It was a calculated release, a bombshell dropped directly into the heart of the Concord, shaking its very foundations. The message was simple, but its contents were enough to send shockwaves through the galaxy. Catalyst unleashed. The data dump, although scattered across multiple secure networks, contained undeniable proof that the Council had been behind the suppression of Earth's technological advancements. The most shocking revelations weren't just about the Terran colonies or their supposed disappearance, but the Council's secret agenda to maintain control over the galaxy by suppressing species that might challenge its power. Earth's brilliance, their advancements in AI, energy generation, and warfare, had been intentionally hidden. Humanity had not just been rejected, they had been systematically stopped. The catalyst had activated across every system. Earth's long-dormant intelligence, its AIAs, operatives, and networks, had awoken, ready to unveil the truth and bring about a reckoning. The Concord scrambled to respond, calling emergency meetings and gathering intelligence from across its far-reaching network. But something unexpected began to happen. Entire worlds, once loyal to the Concord, started to speak out. The truth about the Council's manipulation was spreading faster than anyone could control. Protests erupted on planets once considered the Concord's most stable territories. Some species who had never before questioned the Council's authority now openly demanded change. Within the corridors of power, whispers grew louder. Could the Concord, built on lies and half-truths, survive this revelation? Could the galaxy ever trust a governing body that had kept the truth of Earth's fate hidden for so long? And as the galaxy's secrets began to unravel, Earth's voice grew stronger. A new human leader, a shadowy figure known only as Prime Voice, broadcasted across all channels. Prepare. The future of the galaxy is no longer in your hands. As Prime Voice's final words echoed through the airwaves, it became clear Earth's return wasn't a mere resurgence. It was the beginning of something far greater. A movement was unfolding, one that promised a galaxy redefined, not by the old powers, but by a new order where humanity would no longer be ignored. The galactic response to Earth's return was swift and volatile. The Concord, once the central authority in the galaxy, now found itself cornered by the very empire it had created. As Earth's broadcasts grew louder, as the truth of its systematic oppression came to light, the galaxy was plunged into chaos. Once loyal planets, star systems, and factions began to break away from the Concord. Those who had once benefited from its iron rule now saw it for what it truly was, a corrupt, self-serving regime that had hidden the galaxy's greatest potential to maintain power. Commander Laria Teth sat in the darkened command center of the Argus, watching as the Concord fleet, now fractured and divided, began to splinter into factions. The Argus itself was surrounded by ships loyal to Earth's cause. Dark, sleek vessels that had once been considered myth, now a terrifying reality. Humanity was no longer a lost relic of the past. They were a force to be reckoned with, and their technological supremacy was far beyond anything the galaxy had expected. Laria's heart raced as she received the latest transmission from Earth's Prime Voice. "Every corner of the galaxy is watching," the voice said, its tone calm, as if speaking to a group of old friends. The Concord thought it could control history. But the truth is inevitable. We are not merely a fleet. We are the future. You can stand with us, or you can face the consequences of your choices. Across the galaxy, the effects were already being felt. The Draken Coalition, a warlike species known for their brutal conquests, withdrew their support from the Concord, pledging allegiance to Earth's movement. The Joreth Council, once the most vocal critics of human expansion, now stood in silence, unsure whether to resist or join the new power rising from the ashes of their former oppressors. Even the neutral species, the ones who had stayed out of galactic politics, began to reconsider their positions. The Council's once stalwart alliances began to crack. Some former leaders of the Concord tried to rally support by offering false promises of reform, but the damage had been done. Too much had been revealed. The catalyst had already torn away the veils of secrecy that had shrouded the true nature of the Concord's rule. The truth had spread like wildfire, and the fire was now too large to control. Commander Teth stood up from her seat, her mind clear and resolute. The Argus was no longer just a ship, it was a symbol. The symbol of Earth's return to the galactic stage. "We are not alone," she whispered to herself. "The galaxy will change." Outside, the stars glowed with the promise of revolution. As the ships of the newly unified Earth fleet moved through the void, they no longer traveled in silence. Their message was clear, and it echoed through every corner of space. The old order is falling. A new dawn is rising. The galaxy trembled. For the first time in generations, the people of the Concord were forced to reckon with an unthinkable truth. Their power was no longer absolute. The Argus, now the flagship of the human fleet, moved through the void with a purpose unlike anything seen before. Its crew was a mix of former Terran diplomats, operatives, and military leaders, all of whom had been awakened by the catalyst. Now united, they were more than just humans. They were the vanguard of a new era. Commander Laria Teth stood on the bridge, watching the holographic map of the galaxy unfold before her. The once proud lines of Concord control, now fragmented as entire sectors, fell into the orbit of Earth's influence. Every day, more and more worlds declared their allegiance, not out of fear, but out of hope for a better future. Prime Voice's message is being received well. Captain Sarek, the fleet's communications officer, said, his voice low but firm. The last holdouts are losing their resolve. The galaxy is rallying to the cause. It's not just Earth anymore. It's the entire frontier of every species that was stifled, repressed, and ignored. Laria nodded, her gaze unwavering. But even as the movement gained strength, she knew this wasn't going to be easy. There were still those who clung to the old ways. The political leaders who had built empires off the suffering of others, the corporations that had profited from the Concord system of control, and the military leaders who had grown fat and complacent under the old regime. They wouldn't surrender easily. The final stage of the plan begins tomorrow, Luria said. We'll take the heart of the Concord itself. We'll show the galaxy that no one is beyond reach, not even the Council. As the fleet moved closer to the heart of Concord space, a new broadcast from Earth's Prime Voice filled the airwaves. The old order is broken. It's not about destroying what was. It's about rebuilding together. The galaxy has suffered long enough under those who would hoard power and keep the stars divided. Now we will work to unite, to share, to thrive. You will have a choice: align with the future or stand in the way. A new era had begun. Earth's once suppressed power was now in the hands of the people, and the shadows that had hung over the galaxy for so long were beginning to dissipate. Species who had once been oppressed by the Concord were no longer afraid to speak out. And those who had once doubted humanity's strength now recognized the potential of a united galaxy, led by those who had learned the hard way that silence could never be an answer. In the distance, the great spires of the Concord capital loomed large, but they were no longer symbols of dominance. They were symbols of a past that was now fading into history. The galaxy would never be the same again. We are the future, Luria whispered, watching the stars twinkle outside the Argus's viewport. And we will rebuild. And as the first ships of the new United Fleet entered Concord's capital orbit, they did so not with weapons drawn, but with the promise of something far more powerful, the hope of a galaxy united under the principles of freedom, equality, and shared destiny. The reckoning had arrived.